Hi, I'm Madison Cook, and I'm a visiting assistant professor of practice in the School of Architecture.
And I'm Eduardo Sato. I'm an assistant professor of musicology and ethnomusicology at the School of Performing Arts. So we are here in our exhibition that is like the result of our collaboration this semester, and actually we've been working together in trying to find some like common language in our projects for the past year. So we are here at the lobby of Kogel Hall, and our exhibition is named Listening to Light, and it has like a series of photos, objects, and texts that inspire ways of thinking this relationship between architecture and music. That it is actually an experimental project that we are trying, instead of having one goal, we are trying to build a space or like a community where we can just like converge and be creative together.
Yeah, exactly. And I think maybe we could talk a little bit about how it all got started with these instruments and the idea of using solar geometry and the angles and the two-dimensional representation that occurs when you're drawing and mapping shadows. The idea is that it's a physical representation of azimuth and altitude angles, and they're measured for particular times of day on equinoxes and during solstices, and then that way the students can go outside and actually watch light fall or the sun fall into their design and into their object, and then they're able to have a very intimate moment of perception, watching the light and watching the shadows in the atmosphere being projected into an architectural space. And in developing this instrument project a couple of years ago, I began to call them instruments, and I feel like that was maybe what broke open this idea that I could begin to collaborate with you and talk about the musical potential of daylight and the musical potential of solar geometry.
So the idea of instruments, I mean, whenever we're thinking about music, we think of musical instruments, whatever is used to create music. So what are like the objects that we use to sound and make music? So the idea of instruments for light, it is already like a conceptual, I think, provocation for thinking with music, because we don't usually think of light as something that necessarily creates music, but whenever we start thinking about light and sound as vibrations, as waves that are transmitted throughout the air or other medium, and that we feel it through our bodies, I think we find an interesting parallel here, and that's how I enter like this ongoing project by Madison. The idea was like speaking about ways in which music or like musicians think about this relationship between sound and music over time.
Yeah, and I think two themes that really emerged from our conversations or between our collaboration recently have been the idea of temporality and the idea of perception. I think that both of those are really relevant and pertinent to the ideas of architecture and music. Both walking through a building or listening to a piece of music, it unfolds in time, and it's about the way that the body or the spirit kind of responds to an environmental condition. And I think that that's been interesting to kind of begin to work with both conceptually but also pedagogically. I really like the way that we've been able to involve research assistants and involve undergraduate students in this project and create, like you were discussing earlier, a space where they can come and play and experiment without a really strict or restrictive idea of a deliverable. It's more about a way of working and a way of being and a way of building a community between our two disciplines.
Yeah, I think I really appreciate the idea that students are open to think beyond like this like really practical space where they have to really, architecture students have to draw something specific for their own careers, or musicians have to learn to play their instruments. So it is really what happens when an architecture student start to think about sound and how like this idea of sound and music shapes their own creativity whenever they are drawing or building anything. So that's like I think the main potential that we are trying to expand in our conversations. That it is like what it means for like this interdisciplinary conversation to converge into something.